Hi, I'm Veronica and welcome to my channel. Today is the second part of a series where we're looking far beyond the tight hamstrings as a reason for your general stiffness, tightness, lack of flexibility, um, lower back pain, or whatever else you want to blame the tight hamstrings for. So please don't forget to check the first part of this video where I explain it better. And today we're going to move on to a lunge position where you're really gonna feel how you can access various sections of the back of your legs and how you can continuously engage and release the legs so that you can find a greater range of movement. For this practice, you might need two blocks and maybe a blanket to support your knee. You can start in all fours, finding the place where all limbs get the same support from the earth, and there is a connection between the top of the head and the tail where nothing collapses. From there, you can reach with the left leg back and create a little bit of a bouncy movement there. And then move that leg out and forward to the front. That is where you might start feeling that it's a bit awkward to reach to the floor, that it's very far, it feels very far away. And if you feel that your back is rounding quite a bit, if it rounds a little bit, it does not matter too much. You might want to have your blocks in front for support. The foot is on the outside of the hands. And if you feel that you need an extra support for the back knee, you can place a blanket under that knee. So here you're gonna start with creating just a tiny bit of a movement, moving the hips forward and backward without really dropping much with the hips, imagining as if someone was alternately pulling you by the top of the head and then by the tail. So just creating a little bit of movement here to begin with. And then let's add to that a spiraling motion that starts from the foot and travels all along that leg. So you start with lifting the heel, so there's a weight on the toes, and then you roll that weight to the outside of the foot, lifting the inner edge of the foot. So the knee also goes out a little bit. Then you shift the weight so that the weight is on the heel and the front of the foot lifts. And then you shift the weight so that it's more on the inside of the foot and the outer edge lifts. And that's how you create that circle around the foot. It's a little bit as if you wanted to make sure that you made a really good imprint of that foot in the soft soil. And you will see that as you're making that movement with the foot, at the same time, it's the entire leg that rotates and starts communicating with your pelvis and then higher up with the spine as well. Okay, once that lands, you can now turn your foot more out and keep shifting the weight and keep shifting the pelvis forward and backward. With that foot turn out, you're gonna feel that it's affecting slightly different sections of the leg. And then you can have that foot in between of your hands and turn your foot inwards. Just show it without the block so that you can see it. And do the same movement. So the foot is turned in and you're moving the pelvis forward and backward a few times. And as you can see, it's not about straightening that leg. You don't really need to worry about that. And then you can maybe use the blocks even if you haven't used them before. So you're gonna get a little bit farther and shift the weight farther back. And that front leg is still bent a little bit. And here you can rotate the front leg around its own axis, and you do it by waving with your foot. So basically it's the outer edge of the foot that is coming closer towards the ground, and then it's the inner edge of the foot that is coming closer towards the ground. If you allow this movement to travel completely and affect the pelvis, it would also include the swing of the pelvis and the torso. So we're not doing it here. The pelvis is, it's more an isolated movement. The pelvis is relatively still, and it's really the rotation of the leg around its own axis. Okay, and then you can have that leg externally rotated. Maybe even move it out a little bit and create a bit of a movement of bending the knee a little bit more and straightening it a bit. And if that happens, you're gonna definitely feel a lot of sensation, many more sensations on the outside of this thigh. Okay, perfect. Then you can rest that foot back on the ground. You can again use the blocks for a little bit of support. Tuck the toes under, bend that back knee, and create a kind of springy movement. Imagine that you have a spring in the back leg, that back knee bends, and you're shifting the weight alternately between the front foot and the back foot. And the pelvis also moves together with that. Then you can keep that back heel lifted and reach with hips high up so the both legs are lengthening, and then bend that front leg more and reach with the heel back. So it's the exhalation that brings everything more towards the midline, and then inhalation makes it long. You can imagine something is pulling you by the top of the head forward, by the heel backward. And again, you're not really focusing here on straightening or reaching anywhere in terms of, where is your belly or where is your head is reaching forward, heel is reaching backward. So this is the only kind of direction that you can think of here. And then you can bend that back knee. And again, maybe come a little bit higher for more support. You can lift the front of the foot. So you're staying on the heel. And you're going to create a kind of spiraling motion with your leg, which translates into the movement of the pelvis. So you might be starting from the bent knee, and then you're reaching with that hip back and on the diagonal in a kind of spiraling motion, and that might help you to find a bit more length in that front leg. And then you can keep that leg long, maybe lift the toes for a moment and then lower them, come as high as you need to come. And then this time you might want that to start feeling the sensation of the back heel reaching away. There's a bit of a lengthening and reaching forward, the communication between the top of the head and the tail, and then maybe a bit of a rounding. There's no locking in the legs. They might bend slightly. Your belly is resting comfortably over the thigh, and you might find a little bit of a movement here. What would do some wiggling with the sit bones, some little movement of the legs, of the torso. How does that affect the whole thing? Now you can bend that back knee again. Land the hands on the ground. Move that leg back, maybe even across the midline for a moment. And then stay for a moment in all fours before you do the whole thing on the other side. So you move that leg out and forward. You have that foot landed on the outside of you. And you could start with the support or without the support of the blocks. It really depends much on the proportions of your limbs. In my case, my arms are very long, so I don't really need the blocks that much. But if you have different body proportions, then definitely you would need them. So you can create this little bit of a forward-backward movement with the pelvis first. And then you can make this circling with the front foot. So here, if you're supporting yourself with the hands, it's a little bit more weight. It's more weight to the toes and the heel lifts, more weight to the outside, more weight to the heel and the front of the foot lifts, and more weight to the inside of the foot. So you're drawing a circle with your ankle, but creating that imprint of the outer edges of the foot on the ground. And at the same time, you might see it quite clearly, my entire leg is moving in space, my pelvis responds, and it translates all the way to the torso. After you've done a few of these, you could move the foot more out, turn the foot out, and in this setting, move the pelvis forward and backward. So in other words, you might feel more of that inside of the leg when you're moving this way. And then you can have the foot in between of the hands and the foot turned in. So if the foot is turned in and you're moving forward and backward, it might feel almost like something very new and awkward that you never tried. But that's how you're really getting to various areas of the body that are underused and never get a chance to work to its full capacity, let's say. Okay, perfect. And you can bring that like more straightish with the hands on either side of the foot. And this time you're going to shift your hips back. So if before you were not using the blocks, that might be the moment when you need that a little bit more of the length. That front foot is, the front knee is bent a little bit, and now you're going to rotate the leg around its own axis. So remember, it's not the whole body movement where the pelvis swings from side to side together with the leg. It's an isolated movement, so the spine and the pelvis stay more or less still. And what rotates around its axis is your leg. So you're rolling onto inner edge of the foot and outer edge of the foot, and what really happens is that leg rotates in the hip socket as you do that. And you might move that foot out a little bit more and keep the heel on the ground, and in this position create this kind of, again at some angle so that you can see it, bend it a little bit more and straighten it a little bit more, and that creates a lot of new sensations more on the outside. That external hamstring, and in general, this line on the of fascia more on the outside of the leg. Okay, and then you can land with that foot again and tuck the toes under in the back foot. Keep that back knee bent. Start shifting the weight between the front foot and the back foot. There's a minimal support from the hands. It mostly happens in the legs. There's really that shift from the back foot to the front foot, from the front foot to the back foot. Both legs are really active here. And then you can keep that back heel lifted and create a lot of length along the whole back body. So you bend the front knee, reach with the top of the head forward with the heel back. And then when you exhale, you lengthen, reaching both legs high up, reaching the seat bones high up. So the inhale lengthens the back line, exhale brings everything towards the center. Of course, the legs don't need to be perfectly straight. There can be a micro bend there. And then you can maybe then stand with a shorter stance. You can have that back knee bend. You can come a little bit higher. You lift the front foot and create this kind of swaying motion with the pelvis when you rotate the leg, the front leg outwards, at the same time straightening it. So it allows you to find more space for this movement, and it's more parts of the leg participating as well. And there's this whole spiraling motion, and fascia loves all spiraling motions. After you've done that for a while, you can land with the front foot, maybe lift the toes and then lower them, and then come into more traditional yogic pyramid. So that's when you have the length in the all points, the legs, the spine, all 6 limbs I call it, so the top of the head and tail as well. And then you could allow yourself to soften over the front leg. And it's really softening. It's not reaching, it's not fighting for survival and going against any resistance. It's allowing that front body to soften over the front leg. It doesn't need to be straight, and you're not really trying to reach anywhere. You're just allowing it to rest a bit. And you could also create a little bit of a movement, wiggly movement within the legs, within the pelvis and torso, also as you are still within that shape. Then you can land with that back leg, land with the blocks, move that leg out and back, land for a moment in all fours. You maybe even want to experience how that length was being created by checking it out in a very light and relaxed down dog for a moment without again trying to reach anywhere in particular, but just out of curiosity of what has changed so far. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and please don't forget to check the one before that and the one that is going to come after. And if what brought you here was pain, maybe the hamstring attachment, maybe it's pain in the lower back, I invite you to download for free my first aid for pain, which is a short audio. You can get it from my website, and I will link it in the description below. See you next time.